Hi, 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 hi. Hopefully, I won't get interrupted or nothing. So, today we're going to do about the Unification Church, which is aka the Moonies. We are going to hear the story of the Moonies. We're going to get to see some survival stories, possibly. And we're not going to be able to hear it, but I'll just read some stuff because, YouTube's funny, you know what I mean? So, I ain't going to push YouTube too much. So, anyways, let me just get the other stuff together. Let's see, because I was doing some next one. Okay. Oh, did it wrong. And oh, hold up. Okay, that was sorted. Hi Maria. Hi Jaded. Hi Big O. Okay. So hopefully I got it.
The Unification Church, or the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity, is a religious movement founded in 1954. The movement was founded by Mun Yong Myung, known today as Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Originating out of South Korea, the church is known for its mass weddings, anti-communistic ideologies, and unique Christian teachings. This church movement has also been dubbed the Moonies, though many would later find this term insulting. The research for this episode took me down a rabbit hole, and the twists and turns within this story sound almost fictional. God in body and mind. And number 4, God's work in history is to establish a God-centered family that will create the foothold to turn the evil world into God's vision. So to summarise, Adam and Eve carried out the original sin, which was sex outside of marriage, and because of this, anyone born from Adam and Eve is born into sin. However, Moon can offer you a life free from sin by performing mass wedding ceremonies, purifying those being offered his blessing through marriage, because he is the Holy Son and the Messiah of God. And so through his blessing, you can be reborn without sin. This is what Moon began teaching in Korea, and it's still what is taught today within this religion. So how did this multi-billion-dollar empire come to be such an influential part of thousands of people's lives? Let me take you through the timeline of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, charismatic leader of the Unification Church. Moon, born in 1920 in a small part of South Korea, was raised in a Presbyterian church. Moon studied the Bible and taught Sunday school, and at 16, he talked of how he had a vision of Jesus. And by 1946, Moon was excommunicated from his church after preaching that he had, quote, a special mission on earth, and that he must, quote, go to Japan and to America so that I can let the world know the greatness of the Korean people. After his middle school graduation, Moon moved to Japan. During his time here, Moon talks of how he suffered for the cause. He says, quote, I don't even remember the number of times I was taken into custody by police, beaten and locked in a cell. Even under the worst torture, however, I refused to give them the information they sought. After a while, Moon moved back to Korea and began his preaching again. Not long after this, he was arrested for being a spy, and also for disturbing social order and being accused of polygamy. Moon married his first wife. She was 19 when she was introduced to Moon. They had a son. They named him Sung Jin Moon. He was born on April 9th, 1946. It later became known that Moon and his first wife divorced on January 8th, 1957, and this was on the grounds that the Unification Church had been using a Picarium doctrine, which means a ceremony to restore the blood lineage through ritual sex. Moon's second wife was Mrs. Kim Chong-hwa. At this time of marriage, it came to light that Kim already had a husband, and it was Kim herself who was involved in the Picarium doctrine. Because of this, Moon faced charges of bigamy. This is inevitably what would lead to Moon's arrest on February 22nd, 1948, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Kim Chong-hwa would serve part of that sentence alongside of him. He was ordered to spend 5 years in a labour camp in 1948. He said, quote, "In prison, the authorities beat me endlessly and demanded that I confess my crimes. Even as I was vomiting blood and seemed on the verge of death, I never let myself lose consciousness. I prayed with confidence. God, don't worry about me. Sun Myung Moon is not dead yet. I won't let myself die in such miserable circumstances as this. And I was right." End quote. During Moon's stay in the labour camp, only a day before his execution, the Korean War broke out and Moon claims that USA attacked the labour camp. He alleges, quote, "The high walls around the prison began to fall. At around 2 o'clock in the morning the next day, I walked calmly out of prison with dignity." Although other sources suggested that Moon was simply released from prison, this is when Moon started his movement in South Korea. It's reported that his first dwelling actually had a roof made of ration boxes. A spokesperson for the church said, quote, "Korea was terribly poor, so they decided to do business to create revenue and support the mission work of his church. In the early days, they would paint pictures of US servicemen and their families and sell them to earn funds." The third wife of Moon was Miss Kim Pyung-hee. They married around June 30 of 1955, and she gave birth to Hee Jin Moon on August 17, 1955. If the timeline is correct, this would suggest that she was pregnant before they married. In 1968, Moon founded the International Federation for Victory Over Communism, which was reported to have around 4 million members at one point within South Korea. In 1969, Moon's son Hee Jin Moon would die in a train accident. This happened as the train approached Mapo Station in the Chungbuk province on August 1st, 1969. Mr. Moon's fourth wife, Mrs. Choi Won-bok, was called the Great Mother within the Unification Church. She joined the church in 1954 and has also been known as Second Mother. Moon's fifth wife, and the current chairperson of the Unification Church, Hak Ja-hun. She bore 14 children with Moon, but 4 of them have died. Sources suggest that there is one more woman. She was, so to speak, sort of like Moon's sixth wife. And through the Picarium doctrine, the ceremony to restore blood lineage, she conceived and gave birth to Samuel Park, who was born on January 28, 1966, and is known famously as one of Moon's illegitimate sons. Moon defended himself whenever he had been caught cheating outside of his marriage by declaring that he was cleansing the wombs of the women that he slept with. But it's Hak Ja-hun who is seen as the true mother of Earth, the one woman who stood beside Reverend Moon at the mass weddings, offering her blessing as the true mother of humankind, the one who was posed in family photos and portraits. And so, Moon married and raised the ideal family. Moon says, "Do as I have done and help establish God's kingdom on earth." And according to the Unification Church, to do this is to have your marriage blessed by Moon, and so by God, at one of his mass ceremonies. Church members regard Reverend and Mrs. Moon as the true parents of humankind, and those that are married by them are believed by the church members to be true children linked to God through Moon himself. In 1973, Moon moved the headquarters of the Unification Church to New York, to an 18-acre property in Irvington on Sunnyside Lane that reportedly cost $500,000. On July 18, 1973, Moon's son, Sung Jin, married Kim Dong-suk, the daughter of Kim Won-pil, an important Unification Church member. Kim Dong-suk was born January 30, 1955. And there have been many reports that Moon was actually her father. She was listed as a true child when she visited Moon in 2012, and she could only be listed as a true child if Moon was her biological father. This would suggest an incestuous marriage between his son and illegitimate daughter. It was during this time that the church was suddenly being accused of being a cult. Parents began protesting and asked for help from deprogrammers. and were filing civil lawsuits and having congressional hearings. This wouldn't be the last time the movement would make the headlines from being labelled as a cult. In 1978, there would be the tragedy of Jonestown and the People's Temple to add to cult hysteria. This accusation was only solidified by Stephen Hassan, ex-Unification Church leader who became a member in the 1970s at age 19, but left after almost 3 years and began describing to the world that recruitment into the church has, quote, unethical use of powerful psychological influence techniques by members of the church. Hassan is now an American mental health counsellor and runs a centre for victims of cult mind control and is one of the world's leading experts on cults. He released his most famous text in 1988 called Combating Mind Control, and still releases new texts to this day. In 1982, Moon founded the newspaper The Washington Times. Alongside this, other outlets were created and sponsored to spread the word of the church and preach the views of Reverend Moon. And in this year, Moon was convicted of tax evasion. His followers called his trial religious persecution. He was fined $25,000 and spent 18 months in jail. In the late 1980s, Moon reported that the Japanese Red Army were plotting to kill him. Around this time, Moon began talks with North Korean leader Kim Il-sung. This is ironic given that the Unification Church has very anti-communistic views, and Moon had founded the International Federation for Victory Over Communism. Nevertheless, Moon went on to say, quote, we were like brothers, meeting for the first time after a long separation. He believes he stopped the war between North and South Korea with these meetings and also stopped the USA getting involved. In the early 1990s, there was a treaty signed, and Reverend Moon was even allowed to open a motor business and a successful hotel in North Korea. He also built a church there, and it is estimated that these conquests would invest $50 million into North Korea. Despite having a threat against his life and having his church labelled as a cult, this did nothing to stop or slow Moon, who soon expanded further around the world. In the 1990s, the expansive Intonation program launched, and in 1994, on the 40th anniversary of the beginning of the Unification Church, Moon announces the launch, or rather the renaming of the Unification Church, to the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, or FFWPU for short. It is announced that FFWPU has a vision of creating a peaceful world through true families where 3 generations come together as one under the ideal God. Now that the movement was beginning to pick up followers across the globe, people began to worry more, and the word cult came up more often. At this time, there was an anti-cult hysteria due to the 1995 Tokyo subway bombing, carried out by members of a Japanese doomsday cult named Aum Shinrikyo, which can be translated in English to Supreme Truth. This cult was founded by Shoko Asahara in 1984, and in 1994 the group carried out its first sarin gas attack. In 1995, the cult would become infamous for another sarin attack, but this time a deadly attack on a Tokyo subway train. Aum Shinrikyo, which labelled itself a religion of truth, coordinated attacks on 3 subway lines during Tokyo's rush hour. This attack killed 13 people, severely injured 50 people, which later resulted in some fatalities, and caused around 1,000 other victims to have temporary visual impairment. This caused widespread anti-cult hysteria to spread through Asia in the 90s, and the Unification Church did not go unnoticed during these times. In 1998, Moon's daughter-in-law, Nan Suk Hong, released a candid autobiographical exposé on her time with the Unification Church. It was titled, In the Shadow of the Moons, My Life in Reverend Sun Myung Moon's Family. I found an extensive interview on a website called The Tragedy of the Six Marys, where Nan Suk is interviewed and offers lots of in-depth information on the church. I've provided a link in the description for anyone who is interested in reading. In this interview, Nan Suk explains she was married to Moon's son at the age of 15 on January the 7th, 1982. The age of consent was 17 in New York State and still is today, but this did nothing to stop the arranged marriage. Nan Suk escaped her volatile and abusive husband in August 1995. making her daring retreat through Moon's estate via the East Garden. Nansuk talks in her book of the serious drug habit that Hyojin Moon had developed. She speaks of him almost always using cocaine and drinking huge amounts of alcohol. She talks of how these habits were funded, and that Mrs. Moon would apparently fund and enable her son. She would give him $1,000 to $5,000 of church donations to buy cocaine, have big parties, go bar hopping, and keep mistresses. When Nansuk approached Reverend Moon about this, he admitted that he was aware of the mistresses and the affairs, and he told Nansuk that God wanted him to, and that his son has, quote, God's mission to fulfill. Nansuk speaks of how later that day he would preach to his people that adultery is a sin, that it is the worst sin, and that you will burn in hell forever if you complete this sin. It has also been reported that Hyojin Moon used church money to buy 60 guns that he kept in their bedroom. Nansuk explains how a gifted submachine gun from his parents was actually kept under their bed. Nansuk speaks of how her husband beat her repeatedly, even when she was pregnant with their 5th child. One day during this pregnancy, Nansuk decided to confront Hyojin about his terrible drug habit. She grabbed his cocaine supply and flushed it down the toilet. Hyojin proceeded to beat Nansuk so badly that she had black eyes and a bloody nose. She was 7 months pregnant at the time, and she said that Hyojin would say, "I'm going to kill the baby." Reverend and Mrs. Moon blamed Nansuk for this, saying it was her fate to endure these experiences. Reverend Moon's estranged daughter, Unjin, has backed all of Nansuk's allegations, commenting that this sounds, quote, familiar. She talks of how she was also beaten by her husband, and that her parents told her she deserved it. Unjin now speaks publicly, attempting to dissuade people from joining the church, saying that Moon is not the Messiah, saying, quote, "He is just my father. I think that in itself should say a lot," end quote. So one night while her husband was locked in the bathroom after taking lots of cocaine, Nansuk hustled 5 kids into a minivan, covered them in blankets, and escaped. Nansuk talks of how she had to learn to cook and clean and learn basic life skills after being married at such a young age into such a rich and powerful family. She talks of being extremely proud of her children. And Nansuk, at the age of 32, was working herself at a centre for helping battered women. Nansuk filed for divorce in 1996, and the divorce was final by 1997. Nansuk was given custody of their children. Her ex-husband would be allowed to see the children on the condition that he passed drug tests. He failed these tests. Hyojin was told by the courts to pay $600,000 to Nansuk and $9,000 a month in child support. No doubt this money would also come from church donations. Hyojin went on to break a court order that prohibited contact with his wife and kids by sending a Christmas parcel to the house, despite having a restraining order against him. Terrified, Nansuk said, quote, "If he wants to get to me, he can. He has so much power." These allegations have also been backed by ex-church member Donna Orme Collins. Collins was the first Western child to be born into the church. Her parents actually set up the church in her area, and she grew up believing that Reverend Moon was in fact the Messiah. An ex-member has said, quote, "And so when Moon marries more than 1,000 couples at once, as he did in New York last June, he exhorts them to live the moral high life that he supposedly exemplifies. The church told us that Moon himself had matched each couple by studying their pictures and brief biographies, and the newlyweds say that their families want them to be as virtuous as his. Moon has 13 children in total. Unjin explains that Moon's 5 youngest don't speak much Korean. Moon doesn't actually see his family much. The friendly, warm family photos and family-driven sermons are a lie." Unjin also confirmed that rumours that Reverend Moon has an illegitimate son named Sam Park, who was born in 1996, are true, and that when the rumours of this circulated, members left the church. Upon further research, we already know that sources suggest that Moon had a total of 5 wives and a number of illegitimate children. Going back to the article on the website, The Tragedy of the Six Marys, the article starts by telling us that 4 of the 14 children that were born by Hak have died in accidental deaths, but that the remaining children leave unfortunate lives, filled with psychosis, drug addiction, and sex mania. In 2004, there was a coronation ceremony in an office building of the US Senate, where Representative Danny K. Davis crowned Reverend Moon as the King of Peace. Many other congressmen and women were present, many claiming afterwards that they did not realise it was a coronation. This celebration came after the Tear Crosses Down movement came to an end. This movement consisted of the removal of Christian crosses from over 300 churches in poor neighbourhoods in America. This was due to Moon considering the cross to be a barrier that was preventing the religious uniting under his leadership. Soon after this, a video was released by Moon's movement called Era of Eternal Peace Kingdom, One Global Family Under God. In 2009, 20,000 couples mass married. These marriages are arranged by Moon, and he believes that they must be arranged because Moon rejects romantic love. Moon published an autobiography titled As a Peace-Loving Global Citizen, which was released in English in 2010. On the 3rd of September 2012, aged 92, Moon died. He left behind The Exposition of the Divine Principle, a reinterpretation of the Bible considered Holy Scripture by his church followers. He also left behind an empire that Forbes estimated in 2010 was worth $1.5 billion. This empire includes, and has included, the largest sushi provider in the US, a gun company that Moon started in the 60s where he would encourage members to buy arms because of an impending uprising, a motor company, many successful hotels, the Washington Times, the list just goes on. Ex-members speak out about how the recruitment and indoctrination process works, how the church has become this big. Stephen Hassan told Vice and The Guardian that, quote, the deprogrammers were making comparisons with Hitler and Moon, and I said, I don't care if Moon is like Hitler, I've chosen to follow him and I'll follow him to the end. The worldview of a member of the Moonies was very us versus them. We are the chosen, we are the elite, we are going to take over the world. Only Korean will be spoken, all other religions will be abolished. I was 19, I was going to graduate. I was going to be a poetry writer, but my girlfriend dumped me and I was lonely. 3 women flirted with me, and I remember asking at one point, are you part of a religious group? And they said, oh no, not at all. They invited me over for dinner, and they said, hey, we are going away for a weekend and you have to come. I was very naive and trusting, and everyone was smiling and sincere and warm, and I was not getting that this was a cult, and this is how they operate. Little did I know, within a few weeks, I would be told to drop out of school, donate my bank account, look at Moon as my true parent, and believe my parents were Satan. I didn't even believe in Satan until I met this group. End quote. Teddy Hose, a former Moonies cult member, spoke in the Explained documentary titled Cults, saying, quote, every Sunday morning at 5 a.m, we just bowed to a picture of Reverend and Mrs. Moon. We were told to love Reverend and Mrs. Moon as our own parents, but even more than our own parents. They would have Sung Myung Moon and or his family members come out. Ladies and gentlemen, the true parents of mankind, Reverend and Sung Myung Moon. Hassan continued to speak in his interviews, saying, quote, I hadn't heard of the Moonies. I didn't know about Moon himself until several weeks into my indoctrination. These new people picked me up on a Friday evening and drove me to a very expensive mansion, which turned out to be one of their headquarters. As we were driving through the gate, they said, by the way, we're having a joint workshop with the Unification Church. I said nobody told me about a workshop or a church. They did the classic mind control technique. They turned it around and made it my issue. Why? What's the matter? Are you close-minded? I was put in a dormitory and couldn't sleep. I was planning to get out of there the next day, but morning came, and I was told I missed the van. They said I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't stay, and talked me into a 40-day separation where I shouldn't communicate with my friends or family. Eventually, Stephen Hassan would meet Moon, and he remembers being asked what country he would like to run when the church takes over the world. This is similar to Teddy Hose talking about indoctrination of the church. He says, quote, we'd encourage them to go on this retreat centre in the woods, you know, where we can further indoctrinate them. When Stephen Hassan talks about the different roles that cult members had, he said there was a lot of recruiting or fundraising or political activising. They were the three main roles, I would say. I was there for 2.5 years, but I was made a leader, and that was part of the allure, I guess. My last job in the cult, I was a fundraising captain in Baltimore, and we were selling flowers on street corners. Everyone on my team had to make at least $100 a day, otherwise they weren't allowed to sleep. I would never ask my members to do what I wouldn't do myself, so while I was sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night normally, now I wasn't sleeping at all, and it lasted 3 days, and I fell asleep at the wheel of a van. Woke up as I was driving into the back of a tractor-trailer truck at 80 miles an hour or so. That accident put me away from the group for a few weeks, sleeping, eating away from the constant indoctrination, which led to me reaching out to my sister, who was the only person who hadn't said that I'd been brainwashed and that I was in a cult. So she lured me to her house. She did tell my parents, who had been wanting to help me and find me. As soon as I woke up, I wanted to get all of the people out that I had recruited. Naturally, I felt ashamed, embarrassed and guilty. I reached out to them. No one wants to talk to me. It took me months to admit I was in a cult and speak out publicly. It took me a year to be able to kiss a woman and not have the indoctrination in my head. It was very traumatic. I believe there are positive religions and that spiritual experience is a great thing if you know what you are getting into. If people are allowed to leave, if people are allowed to read what they want and talk to whoever they want to. Nobody joins a cult and isn't deceptively recruited. Citizens of the world look at someone in a cult and say there is something wrong with them, they are weak, they are stupid, instead of going, wow, there is a very systematic mind control regime that was implemented on them and they just didn't understand what was happening. And so they got programmed. They use deceptive recruitment so people don't know what is happening to them. Thought stopping, loaded language, totalist black and white ideology, these are universal techniques. Teddy Hose in his interview goes on to say, whenever some young moo needed my parents for some kind of mission or anything, they had to put the cult leader's needs before their children. Like my father, he was gone most of the year when I was growing up. And in an interview Hose did with the Genuinely Interested podcast, he did that one lady donated 600 million yen to the Unification Church, which is the equivalent of $5.5 million US. He talks of how the New Yorker Hotel is owned by the Unification Church and is the place where Nikola Tesla died. He comments on his childhood being one of church on Sundays and living a well-off life, while other church members pledged their lives to fundraise for the cause, trying to climb the ranks within the church for position of power. He comments about how he remembers Hung Jin Moon, or Philip being his English name, wandering around the town, looking melancholy, and eventually Philip took his own life. A letter was sent out the next day from the church. The letter was from Moon himself, and he was blaming his followers, saying that the death of his son was their fault, that they caused this. And this is when Hose decided to leave the church behind. If we use Stephen Hassan's BITE model of behaviour, information, thought and emotional control, we can see the clear outline of what looks to be a cult. Behaviour control includes modifying behaviour with rewards. This is seen when members are willing to work long hours without sleep to fundraise, which will lead to them climbing the ranks within the church. Another form of behaviour control is to restrict or control sexuality. This is done by suggesting anyone outside of the church is living in sin, and so being with them sexually would mean you are also living in sin. Hassan talks of how he was deprived of his 7 to 9 hours sleep. He was only getting 3 to 4 hours, and eventually he wasn't getting any. With information control, this cult behaviour can be seen with the insider versus outsider doctrine, that anyone outside of the church is sinful, and that communists are doing Satan's work on earth. With thought control, there is a clear sense of black versus white, us versus them, and good versus evil being instilled. As again, anyone outside of the church is a sinner, and will not be entered into God's kingdom on earth. With emotional control, there is irrational fear being instilled by suggesting people take up arms for the impending uprising. Showering potential new members with praise and attention, also known as love bombing. Teaching that there is no happiness or peace outside of the church is done by suggesting members who are not in the church cannot be showered with God's love. All in all, I would ascertain that this church movement scores a heavy 24 on the cult BITE scale, meaning that members could potentially end up with PTSD or severe trauma from being part of this movement. Today, the Unification Church is implemented in over 100 countries. There are several denominations of this movement that have branched off since Moon's death, including one named the Professors' World Peace Academy and the International Conference on the Unity of Sciences. Mrs. Moon is now considered the Messiah and is still seen as the mother of humankind. She founded the Women's Federation for World Peace International. Moon's son leads a faction called Family Peace Association, and one of his youngest sons started a branch movement called Sanctuary Church. On February 28, 2018, the Sanctuary Church held a special blessing ceremony where members were asked to bring bullet crowns and a rod of iron, which is also known as an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. If members couldn't get hold of this firearm or the equivalent to this firearm, they were to go to a gun store and get an extremely expensive gift card to represent their ability and willingness to protect the Sanctuary Church and its community, which prides itself on being a nation of cosmic peace and unity, a universal group of individuals aspiring to build a world centered on principles of true love and true service. The Unification Church is on its second generation of members, almost third, meaning that children already know who their future spouses will be, as parents who are members of the church and had their own arranged mass weddings years before have found suitable partners for their children within the church. Although Moon is no longer here to match couples, arranged marriages still continue through church members marrying off their own children as young as 15. As more of these second-generation members marry, more babies will be born, making up a third generation of the Unification Church. Babies born into the church with bizarre views, never knowing anything different, and without cognitive dissonance, groups of people never knowing a different life of any kind, will mean this cycle may never end. How long can the Moonies go on for? I would like to end with a quote from Reverend Moon. He once said, "The whole world is in my hand, and I will conquer and subjugate the world."
So that was really deep. Oh my days. That's like one of, I think this one even is worse than the Source family. I thought the Source family was this one is quite crazy. It's quite mad. They marry their children as young as 15. That's not even, they don't even know themselves yet or nothing. Anyways, yes, inductionation. You're right there. That that you're right. And the movie, I found the movie. Hold on, let me find the movie that I think I know they was talking about. Let me find the movie. Right. There's a movie called Ticket to Heaven, a surprisingly effective drama that's believable traces are casually um, a skeptical young man devotion into a mantra spouting robot and the efforts his friends and family go to at the risk of imprisonment under kidnapping laws to deprogram him. Ralph L. Thomas Ticket to Heaven is a realistic, sensational look at the law of cultism, featuring impulsive early terms from pre-Porky's and Police Academy King Cutterall as zombified members, and familiar TV presence Saul Robnick as the Stuart most best friend, and Meg Foster as the cold-eyed de facto leader. The film creates Nick Mancosa's David, a recently jilted, I can't say that word, who falls prey to the group's relentless positive reinforcement, all in service of a shady businessman known as the Father. Mancuso brings a hunky masculinity that makes him seem like the least likely person to fall victim to this dangerous con. If it could happen to him, it could happen to anybody. A competition piece to the more a split image that came The following year, The Ticket to Heaven really becomes a touching story of a friendship as ex lovers, parents, friends reunite to pluck down David from the cult's grasp and return him to himself via some tough love deprogramming. It's rather stimulating conclusion, but Ticket to Heaven ends as non-judgmental, suggesting that the unselfish love that a religious cult might offer in all in oh my the cult might offer is in fact all around us in our ordinary lives. Oh, they ain't got the picture. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I seen this movie, it's quite a deep movie. Very deep. That's what Sun Moon reminds me of. This movie here. Let me get the image up so you can see it for yourself because my reading is very bad. Okay. Oops. That's not one I'm ready for. So it's the guy in the purple top. Oh, I don't know where we can see him. So that's the father. Hold on. Let me see if I can find a better representation. This is the guy indoctrinated. Oh, you can't see it. So hold on a minute. Sorry. This is the guy that is indoctrinated in the movie A Ticket to Heaven. Now, it's on YouTube. I will put it underneath the description box or in the comment section. You can go take a look. It's actually quite a deep movie. This is what the Moonies sounds like and reminds me of. Okay, let's put it back up again. Right, so the next one we're gonna see is the survivors. Hi, Real Talk. The survivor. I think that's the survivor one. Okay, let's go here. Oh, I've got a headache. Okay, so this is the one of the so this is Stephen Hassan who they are talking about, and it's a lot on this Guardian page here. Let me see. I think yeah, he does talk about the deprogram if I remember rightly. Stephen Hassan joined the Unification Church in 1970s and was a member for more than 2 years. He now works as a counselor and has written books about cults and their techniques. I consider myself to be an independent thinker. I was an advanced honors student. I had skipped 8th grade. I cycled across the US when I was 16, and I did not think I was vulnerable to being brainwashed by a cult. I was 19, and it was beginning of the spring semester at college when three women dressed like students asked if they could sit at the table in the cafeteria. They were kind of flirting with me, and I thought it was good to get a date. At some point, they said that they were part of a student movement trying to make the world a better place. I said, "Oh, are you part of some sort of religious group?" They said no. They didn't say they were celibate and that Reverend Moon was going to match people and tell them when they could have sex. If they had, I would have said, "You are crazy, leave me alone." I say this to highlight the point about deception. People don't knowingly join cults. Little did I know within a few weeks I would be told to drop out of school, donate my bank account, and look at Moon as my true parent and believe my parents were Satan. I didn't even believe in Satan until I met the group. I haven't heard of the Moonies and I didn't know about the Moonies Moon himself until several weeks into my indoctrination. These new people picked me up on a Friday evening, drove me to a very expensive mansion, which turned out to be one of their headquarters. As we were driving through the gate, they said, "By the way, we are having a joint workshop with the Unification Church." I said, "Nobody had told me about a workshop or a church." They did the classic mind control technique. They turned it around and made it my issue. "What's the matter?" they said. "Are you closed minded?" I was put in a dormitory and couldn't sleep. I was planning to get out there the next day, but morning came and I was told I had missed the van. They said I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't stay, and taught oh yeah, and talked me into a 40-day separation where I shouldn't communicate with my friends or family. Each evening, we had a right feedback. At the end of the last day, I remember writing, "I am too blown away to write anything now." My mind was exploding at lectures that had introduced the idea that all human history was consummating and that God was sending the Messiah and that the Third World War was going to happen in the next 3 years. What did I want to do? Did I want to be part of this great and glorious thing, or did I want to be selfish and go back to my little life? Within 3 months, I was a cult leader. I got very deeply involved, and I got to the point where I was being told to think about what country I wanted to run when we took over the world. I was with the Moonies for 2.5 years. I worked 21 hours a day, 7 days a week in prayer for between 1 and 3 hours. Then I would spend the rest of the day doing PR or lectures for the group, recruiting, fundraising. Everyone on my team was told they had to raise the minimum of $100 a day. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed to sleep. And as long as lead and as a good leader, if they couldn't sleep, then I couldn't. When I crashed the van into the back of a tractor trailer, I'd gone 3 days without sleep. They gave me tapes of Moon speeches to listen to in the hospital when I was recovering from the crash. But you can only do that for so many hours in the day. Out of the controlled environment, I really missed my young sister, and I called her and told her I had been in an accident, and she told the rest of the family. They hired a former members to do an you know invitation with me. It was a very difficult experience because I was programmed to fear Satan, and anyone who criticized Moon, I thought it was the test of my faith. And I was convinced I hadn't been brainwashed. My father started to weep at one point and said, "What would you do if it was your son who had dropped out of college and cut off contact?" I could feel he was genuinely concerned about me, but it didn't mean I wanted to leave or didn't think Moon was the Messiah. He asked me to listen to them for the next 5 days, and at the end of it, if I still wanted to go back, he would take me. I wanted to prove to them I wasn't brainwashed, but the fifth day, as soon as I was allowed, the thought that Moon was a liar into my consciousness. It was like a house of cards falling down. I was horrified. I didn't do anything for 3 months after the after the deprogramming. Tried to out what work out who I was and what I believed. After 3 months, I realized I wanted to go public and expose it, which I have been doing ever since, writing books about these groups' work and working as a therapist to protect people. Now Moon is gone. I'm concerned that the cult will start generating stories about how he walked on water and raised the dead. My fear is that for the sake of the franchise, they will come together and and promote Moon as a great being. It's a lot. It's a lot. Should I continue reading? It's a lot. Okay. Okay. Let me see. I think. Oh, I think I finished. Okay, I've done. Cool. So this is Stephen Hassan. Okay. Hi, Real Talk. I think I did say hi already. So this is Stephen Hassan telling his story. Hi, Epic. Hi, Epic Studies. Yeah, it is a wow, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I think there's another one. Hold on, let me see. Because with the videos, you know how they're already. I would have put up a video of a survivor, but it's not worth getting hit for that. Okay, so what one am I? Okay. So remember they spoke about the sun, okay? So we're gonna look into the suns. Alright, T-ho. Okay, the sons of Mooney's founder takes over as the church leader. What's going on? I hate when they do that. Hold up. Anyways, let me see. Let me find another one. Because we can't even see nothing. They want me to register. Hold up. Let me see if I can take it off there. Okay, we'll do it. Okay, we got it. We got it. We got it. Okay, so Sung Myung Moon, the founder of the Unification Church, known as globally as the Moonies, has handed over the control of the movement to his Harvard-educated youngest son in what is being seen as an attempt to broaden the controversial religious organization appeal. In a ceremony near Seoul last week, 28-year-old Hyung John Moon was anointed chairman of the Family Federation of the World Peace and Unification, the name the church has used since the late 1990s. I hope everyone helps him so that he may fulfill his duties as a successor of the true parents, Moon 88 said, in characteristical in modest reference to himself and his wife. Moon the Younger, who was born in the state of New York, promised to develop the church and to connect as many people as possible to his parents. I will do my best to bring the love of true parents and God to every corner of the earth. Experts said Hai Yong Chin, the youngest of seven sons who have five children of his own, is being groomed to secure his aging father's legacy more than. Did it move? Oh, his aging father legacy more than 50 years after he founded the Unification Church in South Korea, declaring himself the new Messiah with the aim of establishing a single world government under his leadership. The new leader is philological and church one. I can't say them words. My dyslexic jumps in. Graduate practicing Zen and Buddhism, and lived in Catholic monastery, and has been described as the most spiritual of Moon's children. In his book, A Bald Head and a Strawberry, he writes, "I was the boy of the family and probably the most nutty." Moon has been grooming his three sons for the bigger role for 3 years. Timothy Reed, a spokesman of the church in London, told The Guardian, "The Unification Church is not just a church these days, but international organisation with many interests. Religion is just one aspect of that." The Reverend decided a while ago that it would encounter difficulties if it was simply known as a church or decided to broaden its activities. Under Moon's leadership, the church has built a worldwide membership estimated 250,000, although the church claims more than 10 times as many followers, often using questionable methods to recruit followers and secure their loyalty to a movement that criticized and denounced a little more than a personality cult. Its presence is practical strong in the US and South Korea, and where former followers say members have used recruitment methods such as palm reading. That's interesting, palm reading, and rootly take out loans to meet fundraising targets. Okay, we know they do that on a basis anyway. That's what courts do. Despite last week's apparent transfer of power, few expect except Moon Sr., who was convicted in the US of tax evasion, that always comes up a lot, in 1982 to loosen his grip on power. He may have appointed his son, but Moon is consistently giving orders and people do as as they tell him. A former member told The Guardian he is unlikely to transfer any actual power to his son. Experts say Moon's eldest son, Shin, might have been a more obvious choice as a successor, but was overlooked after scandals over drugs and extreme extramarital sex. He died of a heart attack last month at 45. Oh, that's young. The former disciple who left several years ago in protest at Moon's increasingly narcissistic behavior said he accepted the church to step up its fundraising activities under Ying Shin to forge alliances that go well behind the pseudo Christian origins. The church rose to notably in the 60s with the first of what would be many blessings. Mass weddings, often held in stadiums, when it launched in the UK and other countries in the 70s. It's criticized for its alleged brainwashing technique, so-called heavenly deception. Political Moon was most at, at ease the oh, with the conservatives from the US Christian right and his anti-communism and preaching on the sanctity of marriage. Moon bought properties in South Korea, Japan, and US and elsewhere, with the profits funneled into business profile that includes the Washington Times newspaper, a Gold Coast in California, a small arms manufacturer in New York run by one of his sons. Through the movements of finances are many mysteries to all but Moon's closely knit family. One estimated, but the leader's personal wealth at 900 million, maintaining the steady donations from the devout followers will now fall to Yang Shin. And we ain't gonna go through the timeline because that's just like a whole nother something else. Okay. Hi, trips. This group here is very interesting. This group, I'm sure there's loads of survival stories on it because there is a lot. Because he's left a legacy now, but it's just under a different name. Yeah, it is. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, tax evasion's come up again. Hi, Trips. I think I said hi to you already. Did I say hi to Miss Wise? Oh, no, that one. Everybody. I think I did. I can't remember. But yes, tax evasion. Now, most cults, they all look at money. A little bit sounds like Scientology, a little bit. The recruiting method. But like I said, if you take a look at A Ticket to Heaven, you will see that it has a similar template to what is going on in this cult, because they worship one called the father and one called the mother. The prime minister, I think it was, had to step down behind the cult. Oh, is it? Oh, oh, okay. But he did a lot. But there was a lady that I did wanted to post up, but I don't even know whether it's worth me even looking for her right now. Oh, maybe I might just look for her. I don't know. Let me look for her anyway. I'm gonna look for her. I hope I saved her. Hope I saved it. Don't look like I saved her. Oh, I didn't save her. Let me see if I can find her again. That lady up. But it's just that she uses certain words, which is not all. Let me see if I find it.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Cultish, entering the kingdom of the cult.
Let's move this along.
We could have our sin exchanged for his righteousness by faith in him. Like fundamental Orthodox Christian.
I was considered second generation. They would call everyone who was born
Let me see.
from these mass marriages were second generation.
Hold up. I'm trying to find some person that actually talks about it. Hold up. Give me a bit. Let me see if I can link it. I've done it in the middle of conversation, by the way, but we'll see. Let me get this up.
They would call us blessed children. We were born with.
Now, you wouldn't see an interview like this today. The interview guy has a cigarette in his hand, and it's just a very old, camera old school interview. But so you grew up in the Unification Church, and you're here to talk to us about that. And so I think what would be good is maybe just tell them a little bit about yourself, and maybe start explaining too, because I think people need to understand the context of who Sun Myung Moon was, kind of what the theology is. And in relation to, they're kind of known for their mass marriages. It's kind of like that's one thing that really defines them.
Yep.
What it's like to have children, the aspect of having children, those different aspects, what they believe about God, what they believe about Jesus, what they believe about salvation, because that sort of sets the foundation for really how you operated as someone who kind of grew up in the Moonies. So let's start with this. Reverend Sun Myung Moon, how did it start? What's the initial origin story of the Unification Church?
Yeah, so Reverend Sun Myung Moon, he was born, I believe it was in the 1920, in North Korea. And he's self-proclaimed second, like he proclaims himself as the second coming, the second Messiah. And yeah, the Moonies, they're known for their mass marriages. One of the biggest things that they really focus on is the blood lineage. So their whole idea of like what the fall is totally anti-Christian. And we can maybe go into that, into depth more, but the marriages focus around creating a pure blood lineage. So Moon proclaimed himself as being sinless, and thereby having all these mass marriages from those marriages would produce like sinless children. So my parents were the first generation that kind of joined, and I would say it really blew up in America like around like the 70s, 80s. I'm not too good with dates, but and I was born 92. So I was considered second generation. They would call everyone who was born from these mass marriages were second generation. They would call us blessed children. We were born without the original sin.
Right.
From the fall. So that basically is that we're told that we were no longer part of Satan's lineage. We were pure, right? That's kind of I don't know if that clarifies some things of like how I was raised. So it was this weird dichotomy of like feeling very special, but then never really being good enough. Yeah, very, very works based.
How did your parents get into it?
So my dad's actually from Austria and my mother's American. And they were in an arranged marriage in New York. So I don't know if you researched some of this stuff, but one of their biggest mass marriages was, I think, in '82 in Madison Square Garden in New York. And they're very big about cross-cultural marriages, and also like uniting all world religions, which we can definitely get into too, because the Bible goes into that.
Yeah. So one of the things too is, so when you talk about the going back to like how things originated, so Sun Myung Moon, he initially, like Walter Marr was kind of making a comparison in Kingdom of the Cults of him to Joseph Smith.
Right.
So apparently he had a point where he claims to have had sort of a private revelation or an encounter with Jesus, and this is sort of where he got
at age 16.
At age 16, and this was where he realized that he was the second. He was sort of the Messiah of the Messiah.
Well, what he claims is that when he was 16, so just kind of backtrack, he grew up, his parents were actually, I think, Taoists, and they were like kind of poor farmers. He grew up that, and then they converted, I think, 1930 to the Presbyterian Church. But he received some revelation at age 16 on a mountaintop on Easter Sunday. Jesus came down to him and basically was asking him to fulfill his mission. So that's what their whole doctrine is based off of, is that Jesus did not fulfill his mission. He only was able to bring salvation spiritually, and that Reverend Moon had to complete his mission.
Right. Now, when you say, I'll jump in here too in a second too, Andrew. But so we want to make sure we define terms, because a lot of times what cults will do is that they'll use language kind of the same way how Mormons will say how we need to return to our Heavenly Father. Right. And while in many ways you could sort of use that terminology to explain Orthodox Christianity, they mean fundamentally different things. So there's always a language barrier when it comes to the cults. So when they talk about Jesus' mission, from a Christian perspective, from a biblical perspective, you're thinking about Jesus Christ coming to live a perfect life, to live the perfect life that we can never live, and to be the perfect sacrifice so we could have our sin exchanged for his righteousness by faith in him. Like fundamental Orthodox Christianity. But what he taught, and you can explain this to us, is that it wasn't, Jesus' purpose wasn't just to die for the sins of the world, it was to get married.
Yes. Yeah, and that's where they take things out of context, especially when they say, like, when the Bible refers to the bride of Jesus, which is the church, but they take that literally as in Jesus was supposed to have a literal biological wife. And so...
Gosh.
The thing is that, right, in most historical thing, they talk about Mary Magdalene as being his wife and all that stuff. And that how Jesus apparently had a wife anyway. So it's kind of half truths, I suppose, because in the woke community, I remember they're talking about, was it the woke? Or was it the conspiracy one? They spoke about Mary Magdalene being Jesus's wife or something like that, because she was the one who was at the sepulchre before everybody else. She stood there until when he died. She stood there until when she went to the place where he was buried. If I remember the story rightly, don't quote me on it. I'm just remembering the top of my head. And apparently they were saying that how she was the one who went to the burial chambers and stuff, because she was his wife with his mother, because Mary Magdalene and his mother stood at the cross and they cried, and they took his body and did all the necessary to it. So, I mean, there's loads of arguments around that one, whether about the Jesus wife thing. Conspiracy theorists kind of calls it in that sort of way, where there was the one who wiped his face with the shroud, and his face was printed on the shroud, which is in Jerusalem right now at present, if I remember. But anyway, like I said, don't quote me on it. I'm just going to carry on playing.
They believe that Jesus was supposed to come and that his disciples were supposed to find him a bride. He was supposed to get married and have children and create a pure blood lineage. But because of the lack of faith of his disciples, or whatever happened, that he had to go the way of the cross, that was not God's intention. Basically he wasn't able to fulfill his mission. Thereby, Moon saying, I need to fulfill the mission, have a family. So
I want to hinge back real quick to the vision account too. So they do claim, like Hannah was saying, on Easter morning, but actually, so they say it was April 17th, 1936 was Easter morning. But if you actually just have a calculator, you can go back into calendars. Easter 17, 1936 was a Friday, not a Sunday.
Let alone Easter Sunday.
Right. Let alone Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, so
it's just not even.
It's like just going into it is really interesting, but also the parallels between Joseph Smith and Moon is the fact that the first vision, they don't really actually even know the real date it happened. So there's arguments between them,
Right.
between him being the age 16 or the age 7. They've just given us a date now. Just like how we can see there's multiple first vision accounts with Joseph Smith. They just kind of agree upon one, but they don't actually have solid historical fact.
There are all these blurry facts that kind of shift over time depending on, what's necessary.
Right. So really, how does this affect you? Because we always talk about how theology affects people, or bad theology hurts people. How from your vantage point then is that your parents would have been first generation. They actually participated in one of these marriage ceremonies with Sun Myung Moon. And in fact, if you just look up Mooney's mass marriage on YouTube, you'll see tons of accounts for that. I think Vice has some documentaries, and it's been featured a whole bunch of different times. But so their idea was that you would create the second generation. They'd be known as you talk about this too, we know as the blessed children.
Right.
So it means that your parents would view you in a very unique way.
Yes.
And you probably have a unique view of yourself. I mean, kind of told that, I'm assuming you probably grew up with friends that were not in your church.
Right.
And so it's like, how would you have the mindset as a child, being that you're this blessed child specifically chosen because your parents were in this marriage by the second Messiah, versus just your friend across the street?
Yeah, I mean, from a young age, I always knew intuitively that something was pretty off about the church. I was always questioning everything. So when I was told that I was like born without this original sin, and that I was sort of just, they really exalted like, oh, the blessed children. We would even like, our parents would have to bow to us. There was a lot of bowing and a lot of, I guess Asian tradition, because Moon's from Korea, and even their Holy Land is in Korea. So being kind of exalted and having this pressure put on you and saying like you are God's hope for the world, but then you look around, you look at your family, you look at other, they call them blessed families, right? And you seeing how messed up and dysfunctional it is. It just didn't make sense.
And that's what sinless looks like. This is your idea of sinless,
Right.
is all this dysfunction. It's like you have to change the definition of what sin even is.
Yeah.
Like to try to function.
How did that work, like growing up in church? How is there like counseling or anything like that? Like saying that there's, issues going on in your life, or even having to address sin issues. Like how do you think about your own thoughts in that sense when you're growing up? It's like, well, I'm supposed to be sinless, but I'm having these thoughts that I know are sinful.
Right.
Like how does counseling work in the Unification Church with the blessed children?
I wouldn't even really say that there's any proper counseling. I think that's why, unfortunately, so many people come out of cults and Unification Church with just so much mental health. And that was me too, before I came to Christ, or he came to me, but, the really sad thing about it is that they would preach repentance and they would preach sin, but they never offered grace and forgiveness. And so you're in this constant cycle of like, okay, so I'm told that I'm, I don't have this original sin, that I'm God's hope for the world, yet I'm thinking things I shouldn't think, and why am I so messed up, right? And then I'm just basically trying to chase my tail, and they talk about indemnity. So you have to, and paying indulgences, or you might have issues from, some ancestor committed this sin. So you have to go restore and liberate your ancestors, and that's a whole other thing.
So all this extra unnecessary guilt just out of kind of nowhere.
Yeah, so you're just kind of like in this muck and mire of guilt and shame, and just basically, trying to compensate and make up for just where you fall short. They do these things called, I would say, like indulgences, or just paying indemnity for the sins that you paid, rather than looking for Christ. That was, everything was paid for on the cross. You're trying to, just pay for those things yourself. So
What takes place during the ceremony? So people,
Your ancestors' guilt upon you.
what was that?
You have your ancestors' guilt kind of upon you that you have to help
Yeah, they
pay
call
off
it-
as well.
Yeah, they call it hereditary sin. So, so in Korea, they have a place called Cheongpyeong, and it's sort of like this marble city all dedicated to Unification Church members, and a lot of them like flock throughout the year. And it's all built upon really sort of ancestral veneration or ancestral worship. So people go to they have these massive halls where you sit in rows, very organized rows, and you have these Korean leaders just kind of walking around, and you have a stage of people singing and dancing to a very like systematic beat, and you're hitting actually parts of your body to liberate yourself of maybe evil spirits or
Wow.
yeah, and then
Asceticism.
Yeah. Seriously.
yeah, and just so they worship ancestors, they talk to the dead,
All those good things.
yeah.
yeah, and then so also what I was curious, I mean, in your outline you had talked about, so being someone who's second generation,
Yeah.
you essentially, because a lot of this has to do with lineage,
Right.
it's about, and also it's very generational focused. There's a big family aspect, a generational aspect to it, but you had written down that second generation, that you're viewed as pure and in God's lineage, and so your parents in first generation, they were in Satan's lineage
Yeah.
prior to Sun Young Moon.
Prior to like the marriage ceremony.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, but even though you're viewed as you would be one of the people in second generation who's viewed as a blessed child, but they would say you still have 5% responsibility.
Yes.
But God's at 95%, and you have to do the 5%.
Right.
So what does that 5% look like?
That would include like getting matched and going to the holy marriage ceremony. Having children. If I had children, say if I was born or I was married to another second generation, and then had children, they would be like third generation. That's just kind of like advancing the kingdom in their eyes. And be reading all of Moon's speeches. And they have different rituals and things they do. Like they have something called hundoke. They use a lot of Korean language. So we would be reciting pledges in Korean at like 5 a.m., a lot of bowing, different things like that. But I would say the biggest thing was revolved around the holy marriage ceremony.
That's interesting.
And then going to Korea is a big thing as well. So
Yeah, tell them about the Korea aspect, because in many ways this is, I don't know how much people in the Unification Church can do that right now because of COVID, because literally everything is locked down. But typically they would see this almost as sort of like a holy pilgrimage. In many ways in Islam, they would see that doing their pilgrimage to Mecca
Right.
is something that's very unique for them. But just tell them just a little bit about that as well too.
yeah, so going to Korea and to their holy land, that's not like a requirement, but it's definitely it's encouraged, especially if people are dealing with certain sins that are unexplainable. They'll say, well, it's probably because of some ancestor, did this sin, or some medium will tell them, you should go to go to Korea and do all these rituals and stuff like that. That's sort of their way of just, I guess, what did I say? Just, yeah, I'm kind of blanking right now.
So I have a question. I'm just really, really curious. If as a second generation unification member, like the perfect child, you're sinless, why do you have 5% of your salvation left to earn if you're already sinless?
So they believe that second generation are born without the original sin. So
so you can still commit actual sins and then
you can still have other sins, and the original sin is based on the foundation that. So were you able to research anything about the fall, like what their belief is, or what the fall of Adam and Eve was?
I did, and that was insane.
Right.
I never even heard anything like that.
Yeah, Drew, do me a favor. Tell me, when you looked into that, tell me about what did you find out about that?
Yeah, so there is, well, correct me, because you have been in this way longer than I have, which has been for just a number of hours, but there, unlike in Scripture, Romans chapter 5 speaks abundantly, clearly to the fact that Adam
Sorry, I'm talking and it's not even on. Okay, what I was saying when the mic wasn't on, that it kind of reminds me of the Unification Church reminds me of the Scientology Church. But if you took a look at the ticket to heaven, it gives you an idea of how this cult was run in a kind of way. It's quite similar to what Stephen Hassan explained, the programming side of it. The college students, because there were college students involved in this. You got an idea of the next generation of unification children and their thinking, their mindset. I can only give a little bit because she's talking about the Bible too much, which means that because they bring up the Bible a lot, I'm not all that versed in the Bible to that extent. I think let you see your transcript. She is very quite versed in the Bible. So she'll be able to burst the seals on certain things, what they're saying, So without referring to the Bible all the time, we're going to just, see that there is similarities. Like I said, he's got people who still carrying this church on to this day. I'm sure of it. And also, like one of his sons is carrying it on. So though the article was, let me see when the article was. Was it the date? 2008, that article was. So he must have an ear on the so-called throne right now. Okay? So, this is another one. And oh yes, and another thing, I don't know whether you lot noticed, there is a similarities to the modern day cult going on right now. The choosing of women for the men. I don't know whether anybody peeped that one. I peeped that. The choosing of women for choosing marriages important. Separations. He treated his wife. He's been up his woman as well. Domestic violence going on there. Yeah, there is a lot of indications in this one, similarities. I'm not gonna get to all the similarities because I would have to go through it again and be stopping it. And I want you to get the gist of this cult, even if you haven't heard of it. I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of most of these cults. Okay, so as I think I've been on for about an hour. It normally goes into 2 hours most because some cults are really quite lengthy in description. This one's actually pretty good. This is quite a simple one. It's quite straightforward. But let me see what you're saying because it's like I'm not taking notes of what you're saying, isn't it? It's like I'm being really selfish. So yeah, tax evasion came into it. Prime Minister links, possibly, yeah, might, it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me, trips if they have Prime Minister links to the President of Korea. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of they have a template of a cult anyway. You know, the recruiting process, which I said again. The recruiting is very important. Now, the guy said it can happen to anybody and anyone, which is what I've always said. So even me, when I be running my mouth in the comments in some chats, I really think, yeah, it can actually happen to anybody. You can get recruited by a cult, and you don't even realize you're getting recruited by a cult. You think you're going to something good to help further yourself, and it could be more sinister than helpful. Okay, so I am going to stop it right here. Please, have I done the comments thing? Please comment in the comment section. I see everybody going broke wild over the video with the guy, but I feel that we need to talk about that video with the guy, even though I don't want to talk about that person. But if we have to talk about that video, please put in the comment if you want me to talk about that video that is up where the guy is warning certain people whose name shall not be called. Okay? And yeah, there is more cults coming. I'm sure of it because every time I think I've finished, another one will pop up out of the blue in my face. Now, on the other channel, it's going to be a bit blasé on certain stuff, okay? A little bit blasé, not so bad. We might go into a little bit of, I don't know. But anyway, I'll see how it goes. If I feel that I have to take out certain videos out of there, change it round, whatever, add videos, add more cold stuff over there, talk about massage, whatever, it's going to be added to the other channel. So please go over, take a look at videos. Even for the new ones who haven't seen the videos, there's videos over there that are put forward. I've also put my little creepy Chucky looking dolly that sits on a graveyard because, yeah. Anyway, that's just a whole nother conversation over there. So please go into the Facebook one and go and read. There's information there. I've got information scattered in loads of places, okay? Alright, so okay. Oh, so Chrissy has heard of the Moonies. I have never heard of them. This is the first time I've heard of them. I've probably seen pictures of them and not realised who they are. I had heard about the Moonies but was too young to understand the sorority to the people who joined these cults. Yeah, I've never heard of them. I've probably seen their pictures. I've seen another one too. The one that they talked about, the guy who did the gas attack on the trains. I heard about him. I might even talk about him as well because there's cults all over the world. There's cults all over. There's one in Russia. There's all over. I think it's important to cover these later day. Oh, let me see. I think it's important to cover these later day cults. Yeah, there is more. There's the updated ones, but they're not as seen as much as these ones. You know. Then there's that person in Puerto Rico, which I see people's just noticed him now. The elder, but that's only due to the other one who wanted to join their cult. That's how they noticed him. So okay, so there's gonna like if another cult lands in my eyesight, because I think I've put up another one. Let me see, because I might have to do early morning bills. Let me see. I have to double check every time. Oh, that's the wrong page. Okay, let me see. So we can get a look on things. Okay. I think the next one we're gonna change a little bit and go to the Freemasons and have a look at them. Because my fellow ones on other channels have looked at the Freemasonry, and I really want to look at them. I just want to delve into them. I don't know. I just want to delve into them. I try to look at the York side of it, but it's very difficult to grab the information. I feel like you have to know people from his thing so you can get an idea of what he was doing or trying to do in most cases. But in England over here, anyways, I'm not even going to go into it now. Before I start going into next place and go into another subject, I don't want to go into another subject. So yeah, so Chrissy was around during the Moonies time. I think the Moonies was late 60s and early 70s. Okay, that explains it. But yeah, but they do say that they said it was around about that time that they came out as well. It's just that they have a different name. They call themselves the Unification Church. So I am gonna put on when I'm gonna do a live. I will use the Facebook page to let people know when I'm coming up. Or I will put the date forward on the lives. Now, normally, like I said before, I did do open panels so I can hear people's point of view and stuff. But sometimes, because of times, American time to English time, it goes on very late as well. And I'm trying to, I think I like reading what you say as well. But I will see anyway. I'll see how it goes. Excellent. I think there's a connection between cult. Yeah, I'm thinking because the Freemasonry one kept pinning out on me all the time. It keeps coming out, and I feel that they are linked together because most occult leaders use Freemasonry as well a lot. They use occultic and Freemasonry magic, the Bible, the what else do they use? Political, apocalyptic or doomsday. Um, the worst is the far right's cult. I think the worst ones is the far right's cults. I don't know whether I'll be able to talk about it on here, but I will see how it goes because, like I said, the bots is very on guard. They're on guard. Put it that way. So we are. I think the next one might most probably be the Freemasonry. If I don't do the Freemasonry, I'll do the next one that's on the list. And if another one comes up in between that, I'll probably do that one too. But like I said, this channel was not a cult channel. Okay, the cult landed on me by themselves. They literally come to me one at a time. They come one at a time. For whatever reasons, this is why they are coming like this. I just let it happen. But like I said, most of the white YouTubers have covered a majority of them. Some sinister ones out there as well. And I think that this is very interesting because you're like you can be controlled very easily without even knowing it. even with the lockdown thing, that is kind of cultish too. Okay, and we ain't gonna call the C word because we know how they stay already. So that is a part of it too. Okay, so oh yes, and it's mind control. Yeah, it's a lot of mind control. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna stop it right here until the next live, and then yeah. So you just look out for the lives, put the notification bells on, go to the other channel. Yes, it's a little bit different, a little bit, just a touch. I'm trying to see who's over there, who's commenting as well, so I can interact, because I like to interact with you, even though if I'm short and sharp, it doesn't matter. Even if I give you your hearts to let you know that I've seen your message, that I've seen your comment. Okay, if I haven't put it on it, that means I haven't seen it, or I haven't been on the channel. But yeah, just basically, the more interacting we do, the more greater understanding we get of these things, the more knowledge we get, the better. And if you're into prepping, please tell me so I can do a prepping video, not necessarily me doing it. I can go and I can find a whole heap of information on prepping. Okay? Because prepping and what to get and all that stuff is probably, I don't know. Anyways, I'm running away from the subject anyway. I'm trying not to add a subject to a subject. Okay? So, with that said, I am going to come off. I am definitely going to come off. Christy says yes. So let's give the hellos to everybody in the chat again, in case I forgot anybody. There's Jaded Emperor, Big O, Marie R. Let me see your transcript. Alexis. Chrissy. Did I say Chrissy already? Chrissy. Hold on, let me get a better one on Chrissy saying hi. Chrissy. That's it. Miss Wise. I seen Epic, the Rastaman. Where the Rastaman did it? Oh yeah, Real Talk. Epic Studies. I ain't seen Ghetto Child. I hope he's okay. And I ain't seen him neither. Trips. Okay. So thank you people for passing through. Okay, I just thought I'd jump on this real quick as the baby wasn't around, plus, it's nighttime. Well, I always finish nearly midnight. 12 midnight I finish. Right. So I'm gonna find a ticket to heaven and put it underneath this particular video because I really think it is connected. And you can put in the comments what you think of Ticket to Heaven and tell me, does it not sound similar to Moon's regime per se? Okay? I don't want to go off into a waffling thing now. So with that said, I'm gonna come off. Okay? Yeah, Alexis was it? I don't think so. I think Alexis is still around. I'm not sure. So with that said, I'm going to come off. Have a good day, a good night. I think, did I see Emil? Hold on. Did Emil come as well? Did I miss him out? Oh, hope I haven't missed him out. But Emil as well, if he did come true. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to come off. Have a good night, wherever you are, whatever time it is. I'll see you later. Bye.